All right, guys, welcome to another edition of Chat with Charlie. And I have got, I would say this, Mark and Johnny, over 3 years of doing this, and really hardcore, I'd say over the last 18 months. This is by far our best group on the couch with Chat with Charlie. Would you guys agree with that?
You're going to anger some people.
Would you agree with that? I don't care. You know what? I want sound bites, Jen. I want sound bites. Did I say blue water? Did I say anything about that? I didn't say anything about that. All right. But we got Jen Lyles, who everybody knows, who is a continual host on this, which I love. Dana, I love seeing you. Love seeing you in person last week, and you're back on the show, and I love having you. Thank you for being here. And then Robert, Robert Keiser, I've been wanting to really get to know you even more. I don't know if this is the exact forum for that, but I hope our conversations continue and we really get to know each other, because you run and are part of one of the best institutions that I followed for such a long time. So much respect for Doc, your father, and everything that he does and everything he's about. And if I could have a mentor like that, I consider myself really graced, and I consider him a mentor. So I love having you here. I love learning more about you. So first off, Jen, no one even needs an introduction to you, so we're not even going to do that. Just whatever. That's the blue water girl. We already know her. We're good. But Dana, why don't you introduce yourself one more time for our audience? Let us know who you are, what you do, why you're here, and then we'll kick it over to Robert for an introduction as well.
Awesome. Well, hey, everybody. I'm Dana Hutton. This is my second time being on with Chat with Charlie.
So and you came back.
I did. I had a great time. So I'm happy to be back.
You're like a temp to hire right now.
And then I'm the Chief Marketing and Enrollment Management Officer for Southeastern College. And we oversee 5 campuses from North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida.
Do you consider yourself a marketing girl or an admissions girl? Or should I say
I'm an
woman?
Admissions girl.
But doesn't that make you a stronger marketer?
I think so,
because of that? I think so, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And you are strong. If anybody doesn't know Dana, I mean, you'll be at FAPS this year, right? You were just at CQ. You got to reach out to her, mingle with her, talk to her. She's a breath of fresh air in what I would call not a volatile market, but a market that's changed so much in the admissions area, and you do it right. So I love having you here. And Robert Keiser, please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for all of you having me. This might be a one and done situation, depending on how this goes for me. Not because I wouldn't want to come back, but probably because you will not invite me back.
No way.
With that being said, I appreciate it. And also, all joking aside, I appreciate the kind words for the university, but especially for my family and my father. I'm certainly partial to him, but of course I'm biased. So I'll leave it there. So Robert Keiser, pleasure to meet all of you in the audience. My titles are this. Vice Chancellor of the Graduate School for Keiser University. So in that purview, I oversee the international programs, but also the graduate programs for the university. For all my proprietary folk, which are very near and dear to my heart, I'm the Vice Chairman of Southeastern College, a minority owner of Southeastern College, where Dan and I were colleagues, or are colleagues, I should say. And also the owner-operator of a Primrose Early Learning Center.
So that's right. I read that. How's Primrose going?
It's going well. It is a unique situation for us. It's a new venture for the family and for our collection of organizations. We are novices when it comes to early learning, and every vertical of education is different.
Yeah.
And you learn that, if nothing else, just because of the demographics that you serve. But it is going well. We're going to be at full capacity in the very near future. We had some challenges with the municipal government in terms of the permitting associated with opening up our toddler rooms. But my significant other, my wife, is really acting as a COO. She's an incredible job. She's much smarter than me. And I'm not saying that because happy wife, happy life. That is true. And I want to make sure I don't get beat when I get home. No, I'm just kidding. But it is true. She is much smarter than me. And she's doing an excellent job and running the campus there. But the hardship for that industry, interesting, because I heard you when we were having our introduction, our conversation, is actually staffing.
Yeah.
It is very, very hard to retain staff. And the reason being is that it's strictly a pay situation. One of the things I think is most exciting about early learning is that you can have the greatest impact on students' journeys and what they turn out to be, because from an academic perspective, you're touching all domains of learning. You're touching the cognitive aspect. You're touching the behavioral aspect, again, because they're 0 to 4.
Yeah.
So They're really little children, and they're malleable. But with that being said, and I think this is I can do a sidebar on this, but I don't know if anyone's interested, a commentary on education in this country. We do not allocate our resources where it matters the most.
Yeah.
We build football programs, and look, I was the captain of my football team in high school, a huge football fan. Has nothing to do about my preference for football or lack thereof. Keiser University has a national championship football team.
Isn't it back to back though too? Is it?
We went to the look, you follow us. I appreciate that. So we went to the national championship 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Lost the previous year to the team that we beat. So that was the revenge game, and we won. So shout out to Coach Russ and the team. They're amazing. The kids are great. But so not back-to-back champions, first-time champions this year. Fastest program in Florida history to reach a national championship at collegiate football level, or football at the collegiate level, I should say. But the point being with the early learning situation is that the teachers are not paid.
Yeah.
Well, same with K through 12. And if you learn anything about education, is that everything is compounding. And it's not just cognitive ability. Malcolm Gladwell will talk about the summer brain drain, where students lose a lot of what they learn by not going to school in the summer. You see students with No Child Left Behind who get passed along, who don't have the competency, go to grade, and then they struggle because they don't have third grade reading, but then they're in a fifth grade class.
Yeah.
Well, even more so at early learning, because the behavioral techniques that they learn at that age are huge. The cognitive skills they learn are huge because they're most malleable. We know that by science.
It's their nurture time. I mean, that's the nurture time.
And we invest the smallest amount of money in early learning as a society.
And Primrose, is that K through 12 or is it?
It's simply early learning. So
Okay.
Definitionally, you're taking children up to 4 years old. So prior to preschool.
The prime time where like you're talking about, and I think males, I can't remember what I was reading one time, but the brain like attaches at certain ages for females and males differently, but it's such an influential time from many things in society versus their learning and what they're taking in and how they're going to act and how they're going to emotionally act, those type of things. Yeah.
And so they're just prepping them for preschool as opposed to it's not like a daycare. It's learning.
Right. So actually, and that's a great question. So thank you for that, Jen. And actually, it explains part of the schism in the society in terms of educational opportunity. And that's something I'm really focused on, whether it's Southeastern College or Keiser. People ask me, what is my thought for Keiser University? My thought is I never want to be Harvard. And I'll explain that later if that's interesting to you all.
That is interesting. Yeah.
And the reason I say that, though, is I think education's for everyone. It's not for one percenters. Mm-hmm. So your question is, daycare is different. That's somewhere you put your child, and I understand it. I have 3 children myself, and it's a full-time job. So any of those working mothers, you are the superheroes of society because you handle all the responsibility at home, but also all the responsibility at work. Yeah. Trust me, I'm incapable of doing anything at home. My wife will tell you that. So that is certainly true for most women, and so you are the superheroines of society. But with that being said, you have one of 3 options with child rearing, at least as my perspective is concerned. You either stop working and you stay at home and you watch your kids, which is completely admirable, or you get family. So you create a nucleus around the kid to raise the kid at home. Or option 2, you send them to daycare. Mm-hmm. But that's basically just watching the kid survive. You're not building academic skills at that age. Daycare will not tell you that's what they're geared to. They're to watch your kids so that you can do your thing and then you can pick them up when time is appropriate. Is a cheaper option. Third option is families of resources and affluence will invest in their children even at that age, and they will put them in an early learning center where they're like a Montessori school. Yeah. There's a variety of brands, but ultimately where they're learning academic skills and behavioral skills, how to cope with stress and things of that nature. And they're learning that at the earliest ages. I can tell you, my daughter goes to a preparatory school that is K through 12. And they recruit, and they're, in my opinion, and ranked this way, the number 1 school in Florida. It's where I went to high school. I was blessed and fortunate and I'm a privileged individual to do so. My father went there as well. But they only recruit from 2 early learning centers, and they do it intentionally.
Interesting.
So it is a filtration system.
And it's
And
kind
that's
of
part of the problem with our society.
and it's kind of a critical learning time, for that age, I would imagine, for them to start to use their brain in ways of thinking things through or what you're saying. And I'll give a football analogy just because we're going to talk about it. And I do think your coach there won Coach of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember reading that.
Coach
That's right. Yeah. But he runs a tight ship over there, and I have watched them. My son actually played at St. Andrews. It was St. Thomas. I get them confused all the time. St. Thomas, if you know them, and I think they're in the same
Miami?
division. Yeah, in Miami Gardens. He was there his freshman and sophomore year, and he played against you guys and had some bruises to show. So, but it's similar to football, just for our audience, just to give another little bit of analogy, but middle schools, especially in the private school sector, they really do a good job of those feeder institutions preparing them to get to varsity football or if they have a JV, if they've got enough, players and things like that. And the reason for it is they don't have to reteach them things. They can keep the train of teaching moving forward. And I imagine that's the same thing for this is Primrose is educating them in a way so you don't go backwards when they move on to a sister institution or a further on in learning. They can pick it up where that person is left off and keep that train moving forward. Is that a fair kind of analogy?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you're completely correct. And that's what I mentioned when learning is compounding.
Yeah.
You have to have the foundational skills to get to 2.0. You can't advance learning that quickly. It's very rare to do that. Even you were talking about hiring. We have incredible career services and student services people, I'm sure, who listen to this podcast. I would explain it this way. If you can't dress for success, if you cannot perform professionally in a professional environment, it doesn't matter the content knowledge you have. You won't get the job.
Yeah.
So you need to have the basic fundamentals down before you can go to 2.0.
And I'll throw this out there, and this is for Jen and everybody and Dana, and we had some weird noise back there. I'm not sure if Dana's got some UFOs going on again over there, but I'll throw it out to everybody. The staffing, aside from that, my all started with COVID, to be quite honest with you. We went remote. Everybody went remote. We got, I think, a watered down, at least from my side, the forward-facing folks got a little bit more lazier. And I don't mean it in a rude way, just in a what I would call an A-type personality approach to things. And then, for me, my dad always said, what you see me have now, you're not going to have it because you haven't seen all the work that I've put in to get there. And I feel like for some reason right now when I interview people and talk to them about different levels of a position with us is that they want what they haven't quite earned yet. And I don't mean it rudely. They lost the perspective of that gap of getting there to think they're already there. And part of that has been, I think, of an atmosphere of remote or an atmosphere of not supervision is not the right word and not accountability, but kind of this oversight lack. You guys get what I mean? I see a big gap in that part of it where it's like, guys, if I could tell you and show you in a movie format and sit down and know how I got to the chair I'm at, it did not happen because you interviewed with me for an hour. I'm talking years and years and years of heartache, making mistakes, bad judgment calls, having mentors that you can learn from and watch and get there. And 20 years later, I got there. And Robert, I think that story would resonate with you too on what I feel like you've done in this sector from multiple positions to get to where you're at. And you didn't just get a chair and say, okay, Keiser's my last name. I've got this chair. And I super appreciate that, one as a person, but also as someone that loves this industry to death and really tries to fight and support it on how it should be. Do you guys get what I'm saying and throwing that out to all you guys?
Guys, the world has evolved. And I don't know, there's this part of me that feels like it's almost unfair to look down on people who expect high salaries and who expect remote work because things are just 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago when I bought a house, that's not what houses cost today. Because of inflation, because of everything, people's friends all work remotely. There's so many tech jobs now. People are making money on their own at home. So I think it's really hard to find really good talent who want to put in the work and want to come to work every single day. but I also get it.
No,
Like,
I do
that's the
too.
world.
But Dana and Robert, it's a culture thing for me too. Like in your house with your puppy running around, that was for you, Jen, and doing your thing. How can you really feel that? Like, take Keiser. How can you be Keiserfied and really truly understand the mission so deep in your bones to represent it in the way that I know it needs to be represented if you're in Colorado and doing your job and coming in once a year for a 3-day training? And I'm not knocking it. I'm trying to, and I'm old, Robert, Dana. I'm old. I mean, I am old and I get that, but I'm having a really hard time right now wrapping my brain around that and trying to keep that culture. Cause I believe in people. Like I sent someone on LinkedIn earlier. I believe in people over product. Like, I don't care if your product's the best thing in the world. If it gets me what I want, but you're a good freaking person, I'm doing business with you. And I feel like I'm losing that. And I don't know why I feel that way in a way. You get what I mean? You feel me?
I think it goes back to just like what Jen was saying. I think we've all had to embrace, that evolution. It's tough because, work ethic is something that I pride myself on. I like being in the office. I like seeing people in the office because it feels, it's a whole different thing. But, Robert and I talk about this a lot. We were just talking about this, a month and a half ago or something, because it's about now trying to make sure that we are recruiting talent as well. And that talent can be from anywhere.
I know.
And it's changing our approach to it too. We have Microsoft Teams, we have Zoom, we have to take a look at, our internal processes on how we actually, help these folks to adapt and build that culture in with them too. And I'm the first one who's guilty. Anytime I'm doing a team training, we have several remote coordinators. I'll forget to add them in just because if they're not right in front, I'm a people person. So, but we've had to get creative in some of those approaches. And I'll be honest, all three of the remote people that we have now are excellent. They're some of our, most engaging one, and they have the quickest communication with the student because they'll be on the phone with them and say, hey, let's talk right now. And, I've been in a lot of Jen's, sessions and things like at VAPS. And
wait a minute, give her a webinar plug. Give her a webinar plug.
Yep, there it is. So.
I do have the best webinars in the industry. I really believe.
But I'm just going to say, I want to be clear here. It's not that I don't like it, and I can definitely. We've already got some talent. We've got probably 8 or so people on remote now, and they would never have moved to Norfolk, Virginia. I mean, they just wouldn't have. Virginia, they wouldn't have. So I wouldn't have that talent. I totally get that. I'm just so afraid of losing that connection. You know what I mean? Like, I've tried to work at home. And I physically can't. I'm too distracted. I don't focus as well.
So remote work aside, what I'm interested in, especially with people hiring today, is knowing you are hiring people for a short season of their life. I think back in the day, we were like, I want someone to work here for 5 years. I want them to live and breathe this culture. And I think that's bananas today.
Why is that? Wait a minute. Wait a freaking second. Why is that wrong?
Because the world has changed. Because that's why.
No, but that
it has. And all the experts will tell you, if you want to make more money, you need to job hop your way. That's how you make more money.
Oh, I hate that. That's what's wrong with athletics. I mean, Robert brought it up, and I don't want to spend time on that. NIL, all this stuff, the college. That's what's wrong with athletics right now. It's everybody wants a slice of the bigger pie. I'm not saying they shouldn't get paid, and I'm not going there. But there's something to tenure. There's something to sticking it out. There's something to that.
What if you just embraced it instead and been like, oh my gosh, she's dynamic. She's amazing. I want her here.
Because this is my show and I want to do it this way. So, but if I stayed at University of Phoenix when I was a young DOA, I probably would have got to a position earlier that I wanted than I did by hopping around.
And what year was that, Charlie?
Shut up.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
So
what is wrong? What's wrong with hiring someone who's really good at TikTok to make you TikToks for a year and then move on to the next person and they can go and grow their career? I wish more people would embrace that. What are your thoughts, Robert?
Robert, am I just too old, bro? Am I way off base?
It's funny. Like, so we have this debate internally all the time. Dana knows better than anyone. I'm probably the most aggressive in being aggressive about work modality. and also treating recruitment of talent and HRD as a competitive game. I think it is absolutely zero sum. I do not think it's something that you can treat like, so if we're going to treat other aspects of our organization where we have to develop a competitive advantage,
Yeah.
HRD and recruitment is one of those aspects. And we don't think about it all the time that way. But I actually, and this is not to be politically correct as being the new panelist on the show. I'm very opinionated and you'll hear it in a second, but I actually think it's right in the middle. The modality question to me is different than the first question you posed, Charlie, which is the work ethic question. And I'm going to share a quote. So this might be poor podcast form here.
No
but I'm
way.
going to read a quote, and this is what I think about all the time when it comes to personnel in America, and I think it's a societal thing. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. That's where America is right now in our developmental phase as a country. What do I mean by that? So I spend a lot of time with the University of Keiser on international recruitment, international academics, whatever it may be with our international workers. And what I can tell you is I have a social media person that I hired remote in Nicaragua. She makes a modicum of what anyone would make in America, and she is unbelievable. The best social media manager I've ever had. She has the language skills, the competency, the work ethic, never complains about a single thing. Because the amount of money that I'm giving her is something she could not otherwise have. And she's so appreciative of the opportunity that she's getting. I couldn't hire a high school student with the money I'm paying her. Okay? But this is the thing. Americans, including myself, and I'm a spoiled person and a privileged person, so my expectations of my life are different than what my families are. And that's a normal rub and being second or third generation in the family org. But so my expectations of my career, my position, the home I live in are very different than my parents when they were coming up and they had nothing and they were struggling and making ends meet and didn't take home a paycheck for about 12 years. Okay. But I can't live their life.
Yeah.
I'll never live their life. I'll never be them. I will never grow up in the society, to Jen's point, that they grew up in. I can't see the world the same way. I grew up as an American with the boom of the 90s and seeing everyone, the American dream was everyone had a home. Everyone could get a college degree. And so we don't appreciate the things that are given to us. And so for Americans, they won't do the hard jobs that an immigrant population will do. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
And now people will say, oh, that's not acceptable to say. My mother is an immigrant to this country. She was born in the Philippines. So I'm a mixed race individual. And I can tell you for sure, the people in the Philippines, they have the work ethic. Mm-hmm. They pay remittances to their family because they work on cruise ships in the hospitality industry, and they pay their wages back to the family. And they're making a modicum of what Americans would make. And Americans, including myself, would not do the jobs that they're doing because we were born into privilege, all of us. Yeah. So the work ethic is different, no doubt, when you hire American. And that's a sad truth. It's just the truth.
Well, and the expectations, right? Like kids are coming out of school, they're graduating with a college degree and they are expecting to walk into 6-figure jobs.
Absolutely.
To me, that's like,
because they're expecting a lifestyle that they saw their parents live. Why would they be any less?
Correct.
But also they see what things cost today, right? Like they kind of need that. And people are choosing not to have children because they literally can't afford daycare. I mean, just the world has completely changed. And I think it's crazy if we have directors and managers in position that are trying to live this life of like, let's recruit someone and get them to work here for 10, 15 years. Like,
and to that point, if I may, because you're right, Jen, and you're right, Charlie. So this is the thing, like it's a multifaceted situation.
It's so multifaceted. Yeah.
So I believe the kids who are now graduating grew up in the recession. They saw their parents who worked for years with the same organization get laid off. Mm-hmm. And they didn't get the gold watch that they were promised.
Yeah.
They got a letter of a RIF, a reduction in force. And they're saying, well, why would I do that? Why would I have brand loyalty, institutional loyalty, when it didn't amount to much for my parents?
Yeah.
And that's what they're growing up in. Now, I think that's a bad attitude, frankly. I think that's a mistake, to Charlie's point. As an employer who's constantly recruiting, now, again, I'm biased and I have a very different lived experience than most people. I would absolutely invest from a human resource development perspective in the individuals that I know are loyal to me. And I agree, Charlie, process and policies don't make the difference. The humans do.
Yeah.
And so I will always invest in a person who's loyal, who is smart, who breathes and lives our culture before I would hire any hotshot external person. Because I can tell you, I mean, the people who come highly regarded with all the credentials from all these institutions, especially in our industry where so many universities have closed, we have at best a 50% success rate with those people.
Yeah.
Because they don't assimilate. They come with the habits that they developed over years of their career. So they're not valuable to me when they're looking for a new job. So in fact, it's the opposite. From an employer perspective, which is Charlie is saying, is like, I want that organic growth. I would pay more for that person to grow up and go through the ranks. The problem is that, like modality, and this is what I try to explain to individuals, including my father, is that it doesn't matter what we think. All that matters is what they think.
Yeah.
And the people who are going to work for us and with us. And if I don't provide flexibility in certain positions, they'll just find another job elsewhere that provides it for them.
Robert, how do you have those conversations with your dad, who may be a little more old school, or is he also new school? Do you bring those ideas to the table with him, where maybe you guys kind of go back and forth? Have you started changing his mind? Yeah,
of course. And it's a good question. I would say that it's harder with family than anyone else to have a professional disagreement. I'm a very emotional person, so I don't do it so well sometimes. But with that being said, what I would always encourage anyone, myself included, and anyone who's in a conflict, the first thing that I would always say is that acknowledge truth that's not yours. That is like the best way to get buy-in for people who disagree with you. Because like the one thing that I think people absolutely hate is not being listened to.
100%. 100%.
So, like any family dispute, I mean, we can all do this, why not? But you come into the table and you're like, Dana's basically my work wife, so here we go. Dana, what you said to me is absurd. I would never listen to that. Ridiculous. Well, immediately she's going to be defensive. Okay. Or conversely, Dana's my manager and she goes, I heard what you said, but I'm not doing it. It's insulting to people when you don't acknowledge that they have merit to their arguments. And almost any time in any disagreement, there's going to be merit to the other person's point. So the first thing I would do is I would acknowledge truth. And Charlie made a good comment. Culture is at risk with the work modality situation. It is really hard to build team camaraderie and collective buy-in with people who don't live in the same environment, who work in Albuquerque, but then everyone else is in Florida. They're not attached the same way that someone who's in person will be. Now, what is interesting about the work modality thing, sexual harassment, bullying, fraternization all decline significantly.
Big time.
Because they don't converse the same way. Everything is confined to a forum like this when they're on teams. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to do the flirting as much, or you're not going to do the bullying as much, or the improper hand touching or nonsense that goes on in the workplace when you're on teams. But the point being is the first thing I will do with anyone that I disagree with is try to acknowledge their truth, because then that immediately takes them out of a defensive posture. Okay?
Yeah, it does. It gets you on the same playing field. And then also bring receipts in the way of bring what Dana says to the table, right? You aren't coming with your own opinions. And you're not just being like, I think this is crazy. You're saying I'm listening to my staff.
And also, Jen, isn't your truth, and Robert and Dana too, isn't your truth just what you have in your mind and what you've seen? I mean, truth can be a relative subject too, especially when you're having a conversation with a colleague or someone. Your opinion is your truth based on what you know, and you have to appreciate the other person because that's what they know and what is in their brain, right? And so each truth could be truth. It's just how you meet in the middle. And it sounds like Dana and you have figured it out, and a lot of other people have, but there's been a lot of destroyed relationships in the business world because of that same subject. And I would say, Robert, Teams, Zoom, GoTo, all these things. We got Slack now. I'm like, Slack is texting. You guys know what Slack is? I know Jen does, but I'm an old, I didn't know what it was, so I'm all enamored with it. But I'm like, wait a minute, this is Teams. I'm like, what's it
That's all
like?
it is.
Why do we have Teams if we have Slack? I'm like, what is the difference? And then I can text you, and I'm like, literally, I get the same message 3 times. But all these things are supposed to make us better, but there's so many shiny objects right now. To go back to one thing I'm going to say, and Robert, I want to go back to a point a little bit ago. You know, the old adage is, as a daughter or son, you want to do better than your parents. Like that was the old adage, you know, you do a little bit better, even more better than your parents. And to some extent, I was talking to my dad about this. I'm not sure if that's a true story anymore, where like my children, are they going to do a little bit better or more better than I am? And the generations will keep going like that, where I think that was an expectation earlier on. And this is all revolves around more of an big elephant with so many factors. But that is also the thing that I'm going to with the work and the remote and things like that. And Dana, you guys hold that comment, please. But I want you to think about this and comment on this, especially on the mission side. I find it very transactional when I'm working with remote individuals on that forward-facing job with financial aid or admissions, and for those that are listening on this vertical, that's our sales department, those type of things. And less about, you know, looking how they dress or seeing the cross their leg or mirroring them or techniques that we've learned to understand a cadence of dialogue for control. So I'm curious, you know, after that one comment, please comment, and then a lot of comment words. And then Dana, think about that. And I'd love to get your perspective on the admission side with that too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it goes back to just embracing the new. You know, I struggled a lot with the remote position at first because it was a lot of extra work for me because, you know, I can quickly gather a team who's, you know, within 10 steps outside of my office in a matter of seconds. But then I've got to make sure this person's available, and then I've got to get them on Teams, and I got to make sure their camera works, and I got to do all these things, right? So, you know, it became kind of a different thing because, you know, I was referencing something that Jen had said earlier, which was, you know, millennials want information now. And that's something that my remote people can give, you know, our prospective students. They can answer questions right then, right there. They can transition immediately into, you know, this interview, like, hey, hold on one second, I'm going to invite you into a Teams meeting. And so to go back to your question, yes, I want to make sure that, you know, there's all the semantics that go along with a good admissions interview. You know, I don't want it to be so transactional, but now the cool thing is that they can invite me right in and I can be there to observe. I can ensure that our financial aid team is trained to have that same.
So you're more micro, Dana? Is that what you're saying? Is that what
yeah. I mean, you know,
she wants to be, and you can record it, which is actually really good for compliance purposes.
Okay, fine. I suck. I get it.
You don't. Look, we all struggled with it. It was a whole new venture for all of us, you know. And at that time, Robert was our executive director, so I'm sure he remembers me venting. You know,
Dana, you're in the school now, though, right? Or are you hybrid?
I work mostly in the campuses. I do have an office over near like the Primrose location, but I love being inside the campuses, so I'm mostly.
And y'all work together at campus?
Robert and I used to. So he's at Keiser now, and so I'm still at Southeastern College. But we talk often, yeah.
Because you guys have been working together forever. What's his coffee order? Tell me everything about him.
It's black, nothing.
Oh,
my man, that's the only way to do it.
As Dana's, I'll tell you that.
There we go. I was going to say, now tell them mine.
Let's say Dana's. Go.
I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. It's so long. I couldn't remember.
It's ridiculous. I usually have to text it to him.
It depends on the season because I think in October she likes the pumpkin stuff.
Pumpkin spice. I was going to say that.
Yeah. So like, really, I just know that the bill is longer than my taxes, and that's about it. Yeah.
All right, let's get off the remote. I hear you, Jen. Thanks for the segue. I think it's best for whatever your institution needs. Let's leave it at that. Like I say, we're a little different because we're trades driven, so we don't have like an online component, and so it's kind of our secret sauce: a hanger, the nails dirty, being out there. But it is right for some people. I think it's just embracing it and doing that. But you have to find a way to instill that culture. And Jen, I am going to respectfully disagree. I want tenured people. I do not want people to stop and shop and then leave. I want
Pay them a
tenure.
lot of money then.
I have no problem with that. I would much rather pay someone that's loyal. Like Robert already said it best, so I'm not going to say it again, but I'd much rather do that. And here's how I feel about pay anyways. I don't care what I pay someone, because either you're going to earn every penny of it or you're not going to be here. And I don't say that to be rude, but I never get caught up in 10, 15 grand. Like that, stuff that people get all weirded out about. What's our salary band? That's what we do. And that's like, I don't really care. If they're good and we want them, then we should pay them and they'll earn every penny. That's how I've always felt on that regard. But again, we've all got bosses. I've got bosses here, and we've got salary bands, and we work with it. But at the end of the day, our institutions are who we are. The institution doesn't make us. And I don't want to ever forget this, no matter how far AI goes and everything else goes. I just never, ever want to forget that. And I also think if Alan listens to this, FAPS, C-SPEN, CQ, these are subjects I think that should be breakouts, that we should be talking about, that really make our schools better, not how to buy more PPL or PPC, and that's no offense, Jen, or how to do this or how to do that. I think there's some relevant breakouts that we've got to get away from the traditional side and really talk about this stuff and talk about how we can make our industry better, more impactful, and have that shining light that we all say and we all want to do, but we need to bring us all together and still have the nightlife we have there.
I mentioned to you this last year, but like I would love an hour, 90-minute maybe session where it's like, it's debates. And it's literally like 10 minutes of like, these are the different debate topics we're going to do. And everyone can get in on it.
And raw and unemotional. And it's like, will make us better. I will tell you this, Robert, I don't know if you and Dana do this, but we do it 4 times a year. We bring we call them campus directors here. And those are entrepreneurs that run the campus. And we bring them into a locale. Then we get together, do meetings, have some fun, do some trust falls, that type of thing. I learn more about how to do my job better at the poolside with a couple of drinks and eating a slice of pizza than I ever had in a breakout session, meeting at the CED meeting or a meeting like that. And I would much rather value shorts and a t-shirt, a collar, whatever, and having those discussions so I can go back and do my job better because I see them as my client and I want to service them. And they have an opportunity, an unabridged, unafraid moment to really share things, right or wrong. I don't care, but I want to hear it because it is, like I think we all said, their truth is their reality. Their perception is what they see. And that's really important to me. But let's leave that real quick because I do want to spend some time with Dana and Robert. And Robert, I'd love you to go through, because I think, at least for me, and I really think our listeners, you've got such I would say, a long tail of brain learning over the course of your career with Southeastern, coming over to Keiser. I think you said you work in the admissions area. I think you've done a lot of the functional area departments to learn it from a grassroots level. And I'd love you to share that. Dana, I'd love you to share the stories that you can share publicly about, working together. And then finally, what's on Southeastern's horizon? What's on Keiser's horizon? I mean, you've got the athletics, which is going extremely good. I do follow you from Virginia Beach because I love NAI. I think it's the greatest thing ever for athletes to do that and get a very good education. And I've been following that. So I don't know if Southeast is going to get a wrestling team or anything like that in the future. Just joke. But I'd love to hear about what the future looks like for you. But first, I want to hear about the story and the transition of Robert Keiser through the years and how you've gotten to where you've gotten to.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just start the question here, just to piggyback off what he said. I have known a lot of people who, of course, grew up in families of wealth, of privilege, and then, people who didn't. And sometimes you see kids who grow up in a life of privilege, things either handed to them or then not having to work hard for it. Robert, I'm sure you've had friends that are like that. You have an incredible work ethic. You've done everything in the school. You're extremely knowledgeable, smart. I want to know what your parents did right. Like, how did you become who you became?
Well, thank you. I don't know if I can live up to that compliment, but I appreciate it. You and Charlie wanted me to be kind of unfiltered here. So I would always describe it as this. So if I'm talking to students, I would say, yes, I'm a lucky member of Nepotism Club. The reality is I'm a lucky member of the Lucky Sperm Club. That's the reality. So one of the things I think is that, so I'm essentially, so for the audience, because you may not know the story, I'm essentially second or third gen in the family org, depending on how you look at it. My father and my grandmother started the university in 1977. The story is that they were both graduate students who were frustrated with their experience because they felt like they were just a number. Ultimately, they're having a dinner conversation as a father and a son, as a mother and a son would. And my grandmother turned to my father and said, you know, your experience sounds terrible. It sounds like they don't care if you show up, if you attend it, if it mattered at all. So I think we could do this better. And my father said, like, that's absurd. Most far-fetched thing I've ever heard. What are you even saying? She goes, well, look, I taught before. I worked in the lab for many different hospitals. We could do a lab-based program. I would be the teacher. You would run the operational side. Said, yeah, whatever. Yeah, that's funny. He wakes up the next morning, and on his coffee table is the rules and regulations for licensure in the state of Florida. So as a proper academic, my father saturated himself in the literature, as you would say. He read all the rules and the regs in terms of state licensure in Florida, which is a pretty voluminous book if you've ever seen it. And they started a school. My father took all of his life savings, which was, not pretty paltry. My grandmother took the alimony money she had from her divorce. And she would say she won the divorce and that she got the dogs and the kids, but not much of the money. So they started very humble beginnings. It was about 2,400 square feet in Oakland Park Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They started with one student, and the student was late. Our first program was medical assisting. And we try to convey this. I was the president of the FAPS not too long ago. And, one of the things that is, I think, misunderstood about my family in the university in Florida, we have a brand, and people are aware of the university, but they just assume that it was always, as large as it's been, and it is. And the reality is not true at all. My father didn't take a paycheck from 77 to 89. Meaning that anything he made, he invested back in the university. We really were not successful until 89, and then we grew. But it was a lot of sweat equity that went into the university. And I grew up with that story. I grew up with the story of my mother coming into the university 5 years later. So really being a family dynamic, working tirelessly. Dad went on hundreds, if not thousands, of accreditation visits in his career. So he was always out of town when I was growing up. Actually, I say, like, I had always a good relationship with my father, but I'm very close to him now. But I really didn't know him that well until 2010 when my mother ran for state house, because then Dad had to spend time with me and take care of me. So there are dynamics that all of us share in family orgs. One of the dynamics that we all share is this sense of identity and this challenge that we have about having identity, growing in, the shadow of your father or your mother or your grandmother and trying to be your own person. I think we all want to be understood in this world, and we all want to pave our own path, and it's very hard.
Did you see that growth, Robert? Like, were you guys living in a tiny house, and then when you turned 5, you bought a mansion? Like, what was your, like, what did you physically see as far as the growth of your family and this university?
Sure. I would probably describe it this way, because like tiny house versus mansion's all relative. But the home that I grew up in when I was born was much smaller than the home I lived in high school. So definitely saw wealth.
You saw the growth of your family and the university yourself.
The way I could describe the change in the brand, though, and like the success was when I was growing up, no one knew the term Keiser College or Keiser University. They said, well, Keiser Permanente or like the Keiser roll. I'm like, yeah, like the bread. Like that's kind of what we are, but we're not like the A or the EI version of that. So that's how I knew. And now, like, it's amazing to me because, like, I'm like basically a walking billboard when I'm not in like shirt and tie. I have like some Keiser paraphernalia on. So I'm wearing the merch and I'm out in the street and, someone will be like, oh, Keiser. So I swear to God, wearing a short, it was an esports shirt. It just said Keiser Esports. Right?
Y'all own like every road in Florida. And I knew this before I even knew you or your family or anything about FAPS. We have tons of beauty schools in Florida. And every time I would rent a car and drive, I was like, every single road was sponsored by Keiser or like owned by them or something. I just kept seeing like literally on every single highway. I was like, what is Keiser? What is this?
Yeah, that's actually Adopt a Highway program.
Adopt a highway. Yeah, you've adopted the entire state.
But now, Robert, if I can jump in there real quick, your dad seems from the outside looking a very deliberate type person as far as timing goes in business and programmatic things. The great leap of faith that he did, which was very smart to go nonprofit and some things he's done. Is he like that by nature in general? And do you kind of like, does the fruit fall from the tree? Like, do you find yourself a more deliberate person, not really react? I don't find him to react quick on something with a shiny object. I find him to kind of just watch it a little bit and see if it makes sense and then jump on it type thing. Is that fair? Is that fair or no?
So it's so funny. Like when you said deliberate, that would not be an adjective I would use to describe.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, okay.
No, honestly, like, so from a personality perspective, he is relatively spontaneous.
Really?
Yeah, impulsive. He's not organized in any way, but he's more of a big picture vision thinker.
Is he a conceptual guy, more conceptual, and then he needs people to bring it in together?
If the dichotomy is concept versus like production, supply chain and logistics, no doubt. I mean, he doesn't do detail. Like, that's not
so amazing. See, I would have thought. I mean, I said it. I would have thought he was more. Are you the same way? Are you more deliberate by action or more spontaneous like that?
Well, I think I know the answer to that. I'm sure the answer to that too. But I'm definitely, I would say, much more spontaneous.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not interested in detail in general. It's very boring to me.
Yeah.
I'm not meticulous. I'm not organized in any way. I'm very pro risk. I'm very risk taking.
Is your dad pro risk too? Is he pro risk?
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
What you'll see though is, I think with age comes temperance. And wisdom, but also path dependence. So this is like where we like push up against each other.
Yeah.
Because we are very similar in that regard from a business perspective. We're both pro risk. We are not risk adverse. We are both big picture thinkers. But I think over time, one of the things that happens is you have many lived experiences.
Yeah, I see what you mean, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, like he will view things in the context of history and say, well, this is just history repeating itself. No need to react. For example, let's say like the student loan concern, right? Or the question of ROI in higher ed.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to view that somewhat differently. Not to go into great detail, but because I'm a product of my time. I don't have as much lived experience than he does. So I can't say, well, higher education has been through 4 cycles of downturn. And, it's like a scorched earth situation where you clear the fields and then come from, the detritus, or it rise, the cream of the crop rises. But for me, it's more of like, no, this is a bad situation. We should be responsive. Like this is something that we need to be aware of. So we do have different approaches to it, but in general, he's definitely more big picture, not a micromanager in any way. Actually, which was one of my struggles with him, which you would find funny. But he's much more hands-off, big picture, willing to delegate, risk-taking for sure.
I find people who are really spontaneous and people who are risk takers, they fail a lot, right? Like you try something, it doesn't work. But those are the types of people I feel that also are okay with that. They take it all as a learning lesson. Is that something you guys have dealt with?
Well, yeah, I would just disagree one way. You never fail. You either win or you
learn. Yeah.
Well said. And I don't know why I thought.
I don't look at it that way, but yeah, we do try a lot of things that don't work out.
I just love how you said that. I mean, and again, I'm the outside looking in, and that makes sense to me. I get it. I mean, because you said it. Well, but I don't know why. I've always thought of him as more deliberate and more calculated, I guess is a better word for it in a way. And not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's interesting. I love hearing that. That's, I'm learning on the show just like anybody else. Yeah.
I do too. I love when I hear leaders who are extremely successful to be people who aren't so methodical, but more are like risk takers and that way. I think that makes things more interesting.
Yes.
And then you also win big. Like you take a big risk and do something, and when it lands, it just feels so good. It feels so sweet.
Well, I think part of it is a product of scale. At a certain point, you can't be controlling. So I always tell Dana this, and look, I think Dana would be able to contribute because she's worked with me, so she can say when I'm lying. Is that this is like an overused thing, but like it speaks to the modality situation. Why I don't worry about it at all, because my thought on management and hiring people, you hire smart people, you let them do the job. They earn 100%. They have 100% of my trust when they start, and I either pull back the leash or I'll let them run. But it's my job to determine the confines of where that leash allows them to go, right? But at a certain point, when you have X amount of direct reports, when your organization is of a certain scale, you can't micromanage.
No, it's stifling. It's stifling.
Yeah, you can't be in the detail. Well, and not only is it stifling, you're not the opportunity cost.
Exactly.
Doesn't make sense. I'm not doing my job. I'm trying to do Dana's job, but she's fully competent and capable to do her job. And she's probably a subject matter expert far beyond what I am. So what I'm telling her is crap. And I'm just making it crazy for everyone, but I'm not doing my job. And my job is future-proofing.
You just get out of her way, so to speak. But you guys do have some tenure in your leadership kind of cabinet, so to speak. There's a lot of tenured people who've been there for quite a long time and what I would consider very loyal to your family and to the school group in general. So Dana, real quick, Keiser's got beautiful buildings. I've always fell in love with their buildings. In fact, I think my favorite building, and I'll ask you what yours is, but I love the Tampa location. That's probably my favorite, my absolute favorite building. Southeastern, are they similar in structure? Because I can't say I haven't been to one yet, and I need to, but I will. Are they similar in structure, or give me a glimpse into that?
They're not as similar in structure, but we have very nice, locations and facilities, and we would welcome you to visit us. But yeah, we have a new campus in the Columbia area, which is beautiful.
South Carolina?
Yeah.
Good.
Yep. And then we have a fairly new campus in Charlotte, North Carolina. We just moved into a new campus about 3.5 years ago in Miami Lakes. And then we are getting ready to move in Charleston to another location as well, which is very similar to our Columbia campus.
I love Charleston.
We do too.
From a living perspective, I could live there in a second. I worked for EDMC for a while with South University, and Columbia was a very, very good market for us. And I expect it'll be likewise for you guys. Very, very good market. In Charlotte, we're in Charlotte now. Love Charlotte. But I tell you what, I'd love to have a school in Charleston. I've always loved that area.
Dana, are y'all putting Cosmo in that one? I know you have some Cosmo out in.
Yeah. Yep. It'll be, and we're also looking at esthetician as well.
Yeah.
Dude, esthetician, in fact, from an outcome perspective, you got to be careful, at least from our point of view. But esthetician is a great.
They're walking in off the street. That's what I always say.
In fact, I want to do the nail thing. I've been talking about, I want to bring some other things over there, even non-Title IV over to that side. There's a big need for it. And it really works well. We've had some troubles with outcomes and placements and things like that, not because they're not qualified. This is one in a lot of places. So that worries us a little bit as far as a CAP perspective, or making sure we're bringing the right ones. And then you got master esthetician and things like that. What a great program. Absolutely. Any other programs on the horizon that you can give us, Dana? Or if you can't, that's okay. Or you can kill me later and tell us now.
No, you're fine. I mean, we just, really expanded our program portfolio over the last 2 years. I mean, we finally have degree granting in the Carolina campuses, which has been very exciting for us. And so, we want to continue that. We're really wanting to look more into our online, model and expand there as well. So that's what we are. That's the future right now. So
where are you from originally, Dana?
I'm from the southern western part of Virginia, which borders East Tennessee.
So wait a minute, that was a long way of saying southern western part of West
Because
Virginia.
if I tell you that I'm
East
from
Tennessee.
Virginia, you're going to say you don't sound like you're from Virginia. And
Wait,
I'll
is
say,
there
well, I'm from West Virginia, and then you'll say, oh, you're from West Virginia. And that's
is,
fine.
is there moonshine involved at all in that southern western?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Bristol area is where I'm originally from.
Dana, did you grow up going to Pigeon Forge? Did you
I
summer?
did.
Pigeon Forge is awesome.
I summer
You
there.
summered in Pigeon Forge.
It's beautiful. Yes.
And Robert, I get your story is so good, and I feel like we're not doing it justice. So I want you to keep elaborating, but I'd also love to hear anything on the horizon, for Keiser and either on the athletic side, on the education side, any plans that you see, or even in the industry that you see.
Sure. Do you want me to do which you prefer me to first? Because
any way you like it. We probably do about Johnny Mark 15 minutes or something like that. Probably 15 more minutes, and you can take all the time. We'll cut out in about 2 minutes. So we probably got about 20 minutes left. So yeah.
Okay. So I guess like lived experience, like how did I get here? Why am I guess the crazy person that I am. So you get anyone is a product of the lived experience you have, the family you grew up in, the relationships you make in terms of friends, and your thoughts and processes you develop along the way. And it's basically what
But dude, how are you I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to ask it. You're a sharp dude. I mean, and I think, Jen.
I thought that was part of the Lucky Sperm Club, right?
No, well, you did draw out well. Well done, Doc. But I just
He's not the cruel intentions.
No,
type.
there's no
you
pretentious.
went
Like,
route-
go, stop talking over me. Go ahead, Jen. I'm just joking. Go ahead. Go.
This is the hard part about it. What was your very first job at Keiser at the schools?
I was a gum scraper. So back in the day when we were in grade school, you guys, so you guys will relate to this. So like Charlie said, like you worked in a lot of departments. I worked in every department, which gum scraping is not a real department, just if anyone's curious. That's indentured servitude, but that's neither.
Yeah.
It might have been slavery. I wasn't paid, so we'll bring it up with the IRS with that.
We'll worry about that later.
We got some bones to pick with that one. But I worked in every department except for bursar registrar. So I'm not going to collect your money. I'm not going to build your schedule. But outside of that, I worked in every department. My first job, I was a gum scraper. So back in grade school, and it doesn't happen anymore, interestingly enough, people used to chew gum a lot.
Yeah.
No one chews gum anymore, and they would stick it underneath the desk. So my father gave me a paint scraper, and I would scrape underneath the desk and scrape all the gum off. So that was my first job. So look, I think what I've experienced, because I've been through self-help groups and all kinds of stuff related to being in family orgs. One of them, my father got a great kick out of. The acronym was SOBs.
You're kidding me. That was the acronym?
Yeah, you be in a group called SOBs. I'm like, thanks. But it was Sons of Bosses. And then we had a partner org, I guess, a sister org, which was DOEs, Daughters of Executives. And we would just drink together, get drunk, and talk about our lived experiences and complain about our families.
Yeah.
So I've been through the whole thing. I've been through all kinds of success or leadership programs and talked to other people who are products of nepotism. I think it splits two ways. You either appreciate everything that you've been given and you feel an enormous responsibility to take it to the next level, and understand that actually there are a lot of things that go against you in that regard.
Yeah.
And so you just have to have like this kick-ass mentality. It won't matter. Or you don't appreciate anything and you take it for granted and you become a jerk, entitled, and all these things that we all associate with successors and trust fund babies and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a dichotomy. It's actually the most simple thing I think in the world. So the part of the reason why, and I would say objectively, work so hard to earn my place in the family and in the org, is because of everyone I work with.
Yeah.
And I mean that sincerely. I am a people person, and I really, really care about people at a deep level. And you can say noblesse oblige or whatever it may be. Like, it's none of that stuff for me. But I'll get into it in a second. So when it became apparent to me, it was we had a lobbyist, David. I don't know if you want to know him, but a guy named Jonathan Slade, and he had a joke. You remember Jonathan?
I do.
So he had a joke every time I saw him, And I was a kid, like I was 10 years old or something. And the joke was, what are you going to do when when you're my boss? Benign, cute joke you would tell a 10-year-old kid. And the answer was double lobbying fees. So like give them a raise, right? So every time I saw Jonathan, he would say, so what are you going to do when I'm your boss or when you're my boss? And I would say, double lobbying fees. So cute, benign, nothing common.
Yeah.
For me, it was everything. It was so impactful. And the reason is this gentleman from Washington, D.C., high-powered lobbyist, coming down to Fort Lauderdale, who works for my parents, is telling me, I'm a 10-year-old kid, snot-nosed kid, that I'm going to be his boss one day. That is just an incredibly impactful comment to anyone who has any kind of modicum of responsibility in them. And I would have people my entire life come up to me and say things like that. And were genuinely interested in my development, not because they care anything about me. Now, a lot of people they did, and so I don't want to say that they didn't. And I've been very blessed to have incredible people around me, mentors, people who cared about me, and people in the university. I really do. I call them family, and they are family to me.
Yeah.
If they don't consider me family, because it is different growing up in New York. But were interested in my development more so than other kids of my age because I might one day be their boss. So I was very reluctant to work for the university. I was actually very against it for a long period of time because of the mantle of responsibility that I felt. I'm an only child. I have no siblings to pass the buck to. I carry my father's name and my grandmother's name. Just as an example, when I graduated from my master's degree, my grandmother, the co-founder of the university, came up to me and said, Rob, that's really great, but when are you going to get your doctorate? Like, that's not a normal lived experience. And I tell my students this, and I say, look, like I was fortunate, I was blessed, but there's a dichotomy in this country, and this is part of the reason I work for the university. There's two reasons. One was a conversation with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and the other was my lived experience as a student, and then being a product of nepotism. So when I graduated from GW, I was in a fraternity. I took advantage of being in a fraternity, and I majored in drinking, and I was very good at it. And GW does commencement on the National Mall, and it's hot as hell. It's freaking hot. And when they say DC is a swamp, that's legitimate. That's not a joke. We had two commencement speakers to anyone other than a pretentious person like me would care about. Carlos Slim, who's this telemogul billionaire in Mexico. And then Brian Williams, the ex-NBC reporter who's now disgraced, but it's a whole other thing. But they were co-commencement speakers, and we're getting our degrees conferred from the U.S. Congress, which is the only school in the country that does that, which is George Washington University. I could care less about all of it. I sat in the stands, dying of heat, because I was so hungover, just bothering all my friends and the people around me for another bottle of water. Because then I was trying to hydrate to get to the next part. I didn't care. I always knew I was going to graduate from college. It wasn't a thing. I graduated with my MBA. I didn't even walk. I didn't care. And then my grandmother said what I said. But in this country, there's a dichotomy of college goers. And the dichotomy are those who are privileged. It's not about if you're going to go. It's where you're going to go.
Or where, yeah.
Well, yeah, where. And maybe when. You might have that gap year to find yourself in that nonsense or whatever. But it's going to be where you're going to go. You're going to do the Common App. You're going to refresh your browser 100 times. You might even lie about the demographic that you're in. You're like, oh, maybe I have 3% Native American in me or something like that. But that's the lived experience for 5% of America. Okay? The 95% of America, and so Jen and I talk about our differences, is that they see college as an if. It's not about if they're going to go. It's not about where they're going to go. It's about if they're going to go. And their entire family nucleus is telling them, you are ridiculous. Why would you ever go? You're not college material. You go to university is a terrible return on investment. You might as well do X, Y, Z. And why you think you're better than all of us? Like our family.
Did you always know that though? Were you always aware of the other side? No. You weren't.
So no, I didn't. I mean, because again, we're a product of our lived experience.
Well,
so
right.
I went to, I went to like a middle income elementary, middle school. Then I went to a very rich high school and went to a super rich university. What I noticed, though, is when I came back after I graduated my undergraduate degree with Keiser, and I sat on stage, again, another benefit of nepotism, and I watched the students process across stage, and they're crying and they're hugging their faculty, their admissions counselors, their campus president. I go, my God, I don't even know who my admissions counselor was at GW. I tried, swear to God, schedule a meeting, because this is how I am, with the campus the president of GW 4 times, never got a meeting. Like that's not their service model. They do not care about the students.
Yeah.
My student ID was G336428858. Okay, they go, how do you remember that number? I remember that because that's what I used every time I went to the cafeteria, which was all too often. That's the ID that I put on every single test, because at the end of the day, that's how GW knew me. So I didn't know that, to your question, Jen, until I actually sat across stage and I saw how different our industry is. That we actually care about our students and we care about their futures. And it doesn't matter what race, creed, ethnicity they're from.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what socioeconomic status. In fact, the harder their life, the better we feel the story is. We don't weed them out.
And I feel like you're genuinely interested in those people. That's really how we connected. It was at FAPS last year. And I remember having a call with you and you even saying, like, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know where you summered. Like, I wanted to know all the things. And your response was like, I want to know your story. I want to know how you came from nothing and you were able to build a career. And I just found that so refreshing and different than a lot of people in your position.
The seed was always there, though. I mean, I mean, we can get.
So I'll tell you why, though. Part of it, like, is because you're my competition. So, like, I don't. This is the thing. So it's like,
who are you talking? Me?
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Because, like, you probably never think of it this way, but I think about this stuff, like, all the time. It's really easy to have the eye of the tiger, so to say, when you have nothing.
Oh yeah.
But when you have everything, it's so much harder to be motivated, to have that edge, to work that extra hour, to carry that extra percentile. You know, all the cliches about, what is it, water boiling at 212 and all that kind of stuff. That's all about going the extra mile.
Yeah.
If you don't have a need, like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you don't have that need to make money. You don't have that need to work harder. How do you do it? How do you motivate? So I'm more wary, not of those who have, but of those who do not.
That's our opening.
Because that is something that I'm constantly fixated on. Because what is certain in life is nothing is certain. And, you know, so the second part of the equation, like why I work at the university, is my wife, like, again, everything is about, you know, perspective, right? So we dwell on issues and frustrations and we go endlessly, and then you go to home to your significant other, whatever that means to you. And I support all race, religions, and sexual orientations in that regard. Whatever it is, they're like, you're being an idiot, Robert. You're overthinking this. We all had that experience. So
Sure.
The whole thing with the university, I thought entire life, I'm like, oh man, like how much pressure will I have? Like everyone's going to watch everything I do all the time and be under a microscope. And I told Dana, like, I absolutely adore Dana, but we don't hang out because I can't. I mean, it's not that I don't trust her. It's just I work with her. It's a whole, I can't have friends at work. Right? Mm-hmm. So like that's something you sacrifice immediately if you're going to be the boss.
So open and candid. Thank you, man. I'm taking this in.
Yeah. So my wife, this is the finished thought of my mind. Like my wife said, we're always worried about like what the responsibility would be like. What if someone who wasn't you, without your last name, ran the university? Like, how would you feel about that? And like hypothetically, what if they ran into the ground?
Yeah.
Like you'd have to be okay with that reality. I was like, hell no. I'm not gonna be okay with that reality. If anyone's gonna run into the ground, it's gonna be me. And she goes, well, if that's the case, then you gotta try it. And I got hooked. So
and you're hooked.
That's how I got.
And she's an attorney, correct?
Correct.
That's right. You got political in your future office running? Ever thought about that?
Yeah, of course. I've definitely thought about it a lot. Undergraduate, I went to GW as a poli-sci major, switched to international politics. International affairs is my major. Yeah, so I do because I really genuinely want to help people. But like, I think that if you have, I mean this candidly, if you have any kind of modicum of intelligence, like way to help the most people is to have the resources and then not be party to anyone telling you what to do. So like, I think like the Elon Musks and the Bill Gates of the world and the Buffetts, they got it right. They can donate to any philanthropy, any charity, any cause they want, and they don't have to be party to anyone telling them what to do or how to live their life. Because that would be the goal of running for office.
Right.
Because I mean, I think we lost it in this country. It's supposed to be about public servitude, but we don't believe that anymore, apparently.
No, we do not.
So the other thing too is that I don't prescribe to any party religiously, and I really wonder about the intelligence of those who are like, no matter what, vote Republican, or no matter what, vote Democrat. I mean, it's just like, how can you view life that way?
Robert, did we just become best friends? Like, no, seriously, because I feel like I have been saying the same thing forever. I love that you said that, and I got to be honest, I had no idea you would say something.
And I can't believe you used the Step Brothers line on such an intelligent show. Did we just become best friends?
Yeah, did I just dumb this down?
Well,
so I would think about it, but it's sometimes not.
No, just the way you carry yourself, and I find people gravitate to genuine people, and this is not. And Dana, you're the same way. I mean, the people I want to hang out with are the ones that speak honest, raw, and are genuine, not guarded. You know, those type of things, and that's why I asked that question when you were speaking. And I was thinking about your mom too. You know, I was like, wow, you've got some of the cloth from both, obviously, parents on both sides of it. Within that. So just a real good credit. And Dana, he does know your coffee, just so you know. It's just too long.
I will tell you, I really don't. So just like an aside for Dana. So like one of the things to your point, Charlie, that I always appreciate about Dana, she's a genuinely good person.
Yes.
And I think we have enough of those in society. And in work, I don't think we value it enough. We value things that are, to me, less important. But I think being an ethically good person and caring about people, and that's why she's so good at admissions, because like beyond getting human psychology, which she does, she cares. And that authenticity, when you're making the largest investment of your life for our students, matters. Yes. And so when students talk to her, they know that she will do right by them, even if it's telling them to go to a different school or not go to school at all.
Absolutely.
And I've heard her say it. So, I mean, for me, like that's where we always connected, in that we have a lot of commonalities, but like I think we have a very similar heart. And so, you know, we have a lot of fun stories, which I don't know if we'll get to, but like she is really, and what I would say, and I'm happy to say it publicly, and she deserves it. She's exactly what you would ever want in a colleague.
I believe that.
You trust her, and she'll always do the right thing.
I want to hear a little bit more about that, because I think it's relevant. I think it's relevant to our industry. I think it's relevant to what we do and aspire to be. And I want to shout it from the rooftop, a lot of these things, because I think it's just that important. And Dana, I will tell you this. And you know this, when you interview people, everybody always says, well, I love the students, or I love the graduates, or I find that out of 100 people, 95 of them say that because they want a job. And the 5 of them that you can really feel it and understand it, and it's true, are the ones that I think you and I would agree want to work with. And I think you're cut from that same cloth. So that's a huge compliment. And I would second that just in the brief time I've met you and know you too. Although you scared me, did scare me at CQ when you tapped me on the shoulder. I was like, "Whoa, who's that?" So I'm a little jumpy sometimes. So
no, you were super busy too. So you know it's tough when you're working that whole room and talking to everybody. But well, I really appreciate that.
Everybody wanted to know. We just Robert, I don't know if you know this, but we just went through a sale, a change of ownership. We're 30 days post close, and so we do have a new ownership group. And so that was the talk of the town there, so to speak, especially from a vendor partner relation type thing, and everybody wants to know what the future holds and things like that. But it's been really good.
I do know personally one of your bosses now.
What's that?
I know personally one of your bosses.
Do you? Oh, that's right. I did. Mitch mentioned that to me. That one of the
I don't know if
guys
you'd want me to disclose, so I'm not going to mention the name. But yeah, we
Well-
know them. We know him through Vistage. I'm sure is what Mitch told you.
Okay, good. Yeah, he did tell me that. I mean, I'm trying. We've got a few.
Good
And
guy.
like I'm trying to get to know all of them, and they all. What I love is they all have different perspectives based on their history, their industry knowledge, and things like that. And we're not just like a one trick pony with a vertical, a bunch of proprietary guys, which is so cool and so good. And it's a cater to Jerry Yeagan. I mean, he did exactly similar to what your dad has done, and he got the reward of all that hard work, all the caring, and everything he put into it. So on one hand, it was sad and so happy for him to get that, finish line, so to speak. But for us that are tenured and want to stay here, Jen, that was just joking. This is a new chapter in our life with new owners. They're younger, they're vibrant, they want the care, the same thing. In fact, the name's Catula. If you Google that, it's from a past president who was an educator in a very rough area and underprivileged, and that's why we chose the name Catula as far as the group. So we are definitely part of what you're saying, and I consider us in great company with what you're saying, Robert and Dana too. So that is our show of part one. I'd like to have you guys back. I do want to continue it. This is Chat with Charlie. Jen, Robert, Dana, I'd love you to close us out with anything you'd like our listeners to know.
I just want to thank you guys for this open discussion. Dana, the first time I met you was at BAPS 2 years ago. You came by my booth because I had a ring light. And
Of course you did. Of course you did.
She took a selfie with me. And then we just became friends immediately. And we would message each other on LinkedIn. She was just the kindest person I ever met. I actually visited her at one of her campuses. And we've just been friends over the years. So I consider you a friend. I think you are a light. And I just love everything you said today. And then Robert, just getting to know you and being so open and so real about so many things. It is a breath of fresh air. And I love that we are both politically aligned. Let's talk more about the upcoming election because I have lots of thoughts. But anyway,
maybe not on this show. We may not do that part.
Definitely not.
We'll talk about that over a Keystone Milwaukee's Best and maybe a Mickey. So.
No, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you for your kindness. Jen, I always, I don't joke about it. It's the truth. Your energy is unmatched. And I was telling Jen and Morgan and Rhonda last week that it's not a conference if they're not there. I looked the first day of CQ, Jen wasn't there. And I was just like, where's she at? Where's she at? Where's she at? Where's my friend? But you bring so much to us, especially with enlightening, us on all the different social media aspects. And there's so much that you bring to the table, not just social media, but you really help with, us getting our story out there and making sure that people understand what we do and how important it is. And it's always, listen, for the last 10 years, and I'm not even joking, I've had the opportunity to work with Robert. He's one of my favorite people, even though we actually do not hang out. We have a lot of those fun, we have a lot of fun conversations, and he's taught me a tremendous amount. Even though I trained him in admissions, he's trained me in everything else. So that's been a really cool friendship and looking forward to the future. And Charlie, you're awesome. I'm so glad that you're doing this podcast. Way before you had me on, I was a follower of yours on TikTok because Jen made me a big TikTok fan. So, keep doing it, keep getting the word out there, keep telling our story so that people understand the importance of what we do. So
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
So I just echo the sentiment of my panelists. It's an honor to be with this group. And what I would say, I'm going to take an opportunity to use the power of the bully pulpit and use the platform that Charlie is so graciously providing me. So thank you, sir. And I agree with Dana. You're doing a great service to the industry, telling our story. And you too, Jen. Thank you so much. If you are in this industry, okay, and your number one motivating factor for work is not altruism, and if you want to know what you could be altruistic about is that you make better lives for students, then you shouldn't be in this industry. So if you want to make money, there's no problem with that. It's important. You got to keep the lights on. But if that's your singular motivating factor, or I would say even more so, the number one motivating factor, and it's not altruism, and it's not making better lives for students, this is the wrong industry for you. And the reason why I say that is because I believe the universities and the colleges that still exist today, who have been put under the microscope by the government, the AIMs, Tidewater Techs, Keiser universities, Southeastern colleges, all the universities out there, ECPIs, it's because they were done for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. That's why they stood the test of time. So that would be my PSA to everyone. But thank you again. It was an honor. I appreciate it.
Love it, guys. Thank you so much, and look forward to talking again real soon and seeing you in person at FAPS down the road.
So.
All right, guys.